Hi golfers, Rob Cheney here from GOLFTEC Singapore. Today's video we're going to be discussing the legs and more specifically the role of the knees throughout the time and space of the swing. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can use your knee flex change to increase your turns, improve your tilts, and ultimately just learn to control your club path on demand, I suggest you keep watching.
Swing. That was a good swing.
I'm also really excited today to be able to share with you GOLFTEC's new OptiMotion motion measurement system. I'm going to be using that today in the lesson. So stick around and have a look at how GOLFTEC are transforming golf swing analysis and technology in terms of 3D motion measurement. It's going to be really cool to watch. Those of you who have taken your lessons at GOLFTEC previously will be familiar that we used to have the tripod behind with the sensors on the golfer, one for the shoulders and one for the hips. Now if we take a look at the new OptiMotion system, you're going to see that we're now using a camera-based AI technology to help us to pinpoint data points on the golfer's body, and then using those two cameras to be able to monitor and match and track the joints throughout the time and space of the swing. So I think it's really cool. We've been using it here at GOLFTEC Singapore now for the last few weeks. The feedback's been incredible. If you haven't had your swing measured by GOLFTEC, and especially if you haven't had it measured using the new OptiMotion technology, I highly recommend you get down to your local GOLFTEC and check it out today. Okay, so I want to discuss the legs and the knees today specifically. I've stood on the mat and I've hit 3 shots. I've hit one which I would consider to just be the standard regular swing of mine, and I'll discuss that baseline first, which produces for me a slightly into-out swing path and produces my standard push draw. I'll talk you through that first, and then I'll show you with the 2 other swings how I went for things on the either end of the spectrum, one being excessively straightening the trail leg and not bending it correctly on the downswing, and then on the second the example I'll show you what keeping your leg or keeping your trail leg more flexed would tend to do for your pattern and your swing path. So as we look at the screen, it's going to remove the skeleton lines so we can actually see the swing, but you'll notice there at the start of the swing my trail knee has 22 degrees of flex, so that means it's bent in this manner here. So I've just used my red line just to help you guys to see that. So that would be pretty normal, between 20 and 25 degrees of flex in the trail leg at P1, depending on the club and depending on the individual's body type and shape and length and height. But 20 to 25 degrees of flexion at P1 is pretty standard. And then what I want you to notice is as soon as I start to move back, the straightening of the trail leg and the flexing of the front leg or the lead leg would be almost immediate. In fact, by the time I actually get to pull the trigger here, I'm at 24 degrees flexed. And as I start to move the club, you'll see how that number starts to reduce. 23, 22, 21, 20. It's progressively, gradually straightening throughout the entire first part of the backswing. So by the time we get to P2, I've lost 10 degrees of flex in the trail leg, the right leg, in my case, the lead leg is starting to flex more, and that's allowing me to turn my hips, my pelvis, and turn my shoulders on a tilted angle. So all the way to the top here, if we keep going, the leg gets as straight as about 5 degrees of flex. So just after P3 here, you'll see how the trail leg is straightened to its maximum amount. Notice it does still have some flex in it. We're not talking about straightening it to completely straight. But by the time I reach the top of the swing, interestingly, and something I want to point out, is that the trail leg would begin to reflex before you reach the top of the swing. So before I've even finished my backswing, which would be about here, this frame right here, I've reached 11 degrees of flex again. So between left arm parallel, where I'm getting to 6 or even 5 degrees of flex, by the time I reach the top of the swing, I've started and began to reflex that trail leg again. Part of that is about getting ready to turn my hips and turn my body back in the opposite direction. So at the top of the swing here, lots of sort of standard numbers, things like 94 degrees of shoulder turn, which would be pretty much a solid number for a 7-iron, 50 to 54 degrees of hip turn. So plenty of rotation there, turning on a nice tilted angle. I've tilted my shoulders and my hips. You'll see the daylight there between my knees. I'm able to create some space there. Changing my knee flex allows me to turn my hips. Turning my hips allows me to turn my shoulders. So it's important to understand that this is a necessary part of every good golf swing. And now as we move into the downswing, I want you to see how the trail leg begins to regain that original flex. So all the way back down to really where the shaft's parallel with the ground, P6, my trail knee has returned to its original flexion. That's a pretty standard move. That's moving the knees back to their original condition in and around that P6 position, which is shaft parallel to the ground on the downswing. And from there, there's a little bit more flexing by the time I hit the ball, but my knee doesn't keep flexing towards the ball for too long. Clearly that's a pattern that some people demonstrate. So the ability to change the knee flex in the backswing progressively, begin to reflex just by the time you reach the top of the swing, flexing back towards original leg or knee flex just before impact, and then as I hit through the ball, learning to really keep the legs pushing up and straightening so that my hips can keep moving forwards and I can finish in that nice extended position. So that's my follow through right there. We're through to a very appropriate amount of turning on the follow through and very much the right amount of tilting with my body as well. So I think it's good there for you to notice that there is a pattern of movement for standard baseline swing, which would produce a pretty neutral club path. And what we're going to take a look at now is what would happen if I chose to increase the amount of extension or flexion in the legs and the knees, and the effect that that would have on the club path. Okay, now let's take a look at a swing where I straighten my trail leg more than I would generally prescribe. Some of the benefits to doing that, some of the expected changes that would produce, and its effect or influence on the club path. So we start from the beginning and P1 again. In anticipation for me straightening my leg more on this swing, I've actually already started with it a little bit straighter. That's probably me in the back of my mind thinking that I need to really get this back leg straight. You're going to see as I start to move into the backswing how it continues to straighten, and on this occasion it even reaches 1 degree of extension, meaning it's really got to that straight condition. I generally wouldn't prescribe this to go back that far. It can cause some issues for over rotation. By the time I get to the top of my swing here, my leg is effectively straight at 1 degree flexed. My turns have increased somewhat significantly. So the benefit of straightening your trail leg more on the backswing is it should help you to increase your turns. That could be really interesting and useful for you if you're noticing or finding that you're not really able to turn and create as much potential power as you used to be. The turning more would then, straightening the trail knee more would tend to increase your turns on the backswing. And in doing so, creating that extra turn and depth means as we swing down, we're going to be able to potentially swing more from the inside. You'll see how I swing down here. I don't regain that flex in my trail leg as much as I did before. My leg is staying straighter. And as a consequence of that, my club path or the club head here is traveling more from the inside as it reaches the ball. So if I wanted to swing more to out, that would mean if I wanted to be more likely to hit a draw or reduce my slice tendency, I would prescribe turning the hips and shoulders more in the backswing, and to help that happen, I would encourage the knees to change flex more. So straightening the trail leg the most and not allowing it to flex too much again on the downswing. And even into the follow through here, my leg is staying much straighter. So it's really not flexing down and towards the ground at all. And keeping the leg straight like this will slow down the hip turn and the shoulder turn in the follow through, allowing you to get the arms to transfer some of the momentum and power into the ball and get those arms and hands creating some of that speed rather than you relying on the body to create it for you. And finally, let's take a look at the swing where I would choose to keep my trail leg more flexed, so not let it lose flex as much in the backswing. Expectations would be reducing the turn component because you're not allowing the body to move within that range of motion as it would like to. You're not allowing that freedom of movement by changing your knee flex. So I would expect reduced turns, and I would expect the path of the swing to get straighter or even slightly out to in. So what would this be good for? This would be good for the person who over rotates in the backswing. This would be good for someone who swings too much from the inside. Let's take a look. Once again, at the beginning of the swing here, I'm trying to keep my trail leg more flexed, and in doing so, I'm setting up with it more flexed. I'm actually at 32 degrees here before I even bring the club back. On a swing like this, where I really try to keep my trail leg flexed, you're going to notice a couple of things. First of all, it still loses some flex. I don't think there's anybody who's keeping their trail leg completely flexed, and if they are, they're certainly not playing a very high level of golf. So the knee's still losing some flex, but in my swing here, my example, I'm really trying to keep that back leg flexed and have a limited amount of change of the knee flex, and therefore limit the amount of rotation in my hips and my pelvis. As I reach the top, you'll see I made it to 19, 20, and I'm already again beginning to reflex that knee before I start or before I reach the end of my backswing. Coming down, I'm going to really start to push that knee back into the ground and towards the ball. You'll notice here at P6, where the shaft is parallel to the ground on the downswing, the knee's flexed past or beyond its original flex at address, and that would tend to have the effect, as it has done in this video, of throwing the club head further out at this point in time, further out towards the ball. So now the club head in this example is very much outside of my hands, whereas in the previous videos, and especially the video where I kept the leg extremely straight, my club head was in a completely different position relative to my hands. That's an enormously important piece for you to understand if you're trying to change your swing path. So in this example here, more knee flex, regaining additional flex, it's adding and increasing how fast I'm opening up my turns of my body in the downswing, and it's throwing the club head further out towards the ball. So this is going to produce a path which is much more out to in than would be my typical, my standard swing path. And that would produce, for me at least, less drawing of the ball. These balls, and that ball in particular that I just hit, flew pretty straight with a tiny little fade on it. For someone who slices the ball too much already, this pattern would not be recommended. As I said, this one would be recommended for you if you're tending to overturn or over-rotate in the backswing, or you're struggling with reducing the amount that you hook the ball or curve the ball to the left as a right-handed golfer. Guys, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you found it useful. My goal there was to try to explain and help you understand that there's a sort of baseline that good golfers generally fall within in terms of how they move their knees throughout the time and space of the swing, and that you can then use that information and understand the extreme ends of the spectrum to encourage you to move more in that pattern. So depending on your individual tendency, having more or less of that knee flex could definitely help you. In my experience, most people need to do more of it. Generally speaking, as golfers get older, lose their flexibility, lose some of that range of motion, the best thing you could be doing to increase your turns and enable you to start swinging further around you and create more potential power again is to start changing your knee flex. Knee flex is the start point of allowing this rotation in the pelvis and then in the shoulders and the torso and the shoulders to happen. So take a look at your swing. As I always recommend, take some film, have a look at it from down the line, look at what your knees tend to do, and then compare it to what I've suggested. And if you need more range of motion, if you want to take some stress off your body, increase the amount you change the flex. If you're someone who overturns and gets far too much backswing, finds yourself losing control, then reducing the amount of knee flex could be perfect for you. Guys, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. I love hearing from you. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, click that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to see some more golf related content coming your way very soon. And finally, hope you enjoyed the OptiMotion introduction today. We're going to be talking a lot more about this over the coming weeks. So if you want to see more GOLFTEC OptiMotion features and some of the ways that we use the technology in the bay here, Please check back soon. I'll have some more content for you. Until next time guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you very soon for another video.